This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Today I'm joined by the Managing Director of Mental Toughness Partners and a leading authority in the field, Paul Lyons, where he tells me and yourselves, the listener, how mental toughness applies to his typical client, a business owner, or someone in a leadership role. He also tells us how he sees the crossover between sport, fitness, and the business world. And we also go on to chat about how he goes about developing mental toughness with individuals and what types of benefits his clients experience. How do you define mental toughness and how does it apply to your typical client?
So, good question. So I'll give you the context. So I'm not a psych, don't have a psych background, and I'm not from an educational background. So my background's business. And for pretty much all my career, I was a business owner and running a business. And so therefore, my definitions of mental toughness and my, I suppose, understanding and appreciation of mental toughness really come from that perspective. So they tend to be in everyday language, practical language, that perhaps I can understand better, but also my clients, who most of them would be business owners and or business leaders. So with that in mind, I'll give a shout out straight away to AQR, who developed the MTQ Plus and 4Cs, so the MTQ family framework of mental toughness, because that in itself is really simple. And I use that because it's simple and it's contemporary, and it's obviously very well backed scientifically. So I do use that framework a lot, the 4Cs framework, in what I do. But generally, there are a couple of, I suppose, quotes that I will use all the time that I think, to me, illustrate what mental toughness would be and what the definition would be. And the first one probably is that I really like is Peter Clough's definition. So he's obviously, as you know, one of the authors of the MTQ framework. And his view is that mental toughness is being comfortable in your own skin. And I really like that definition, and it resonates with my audience, because once you start to unpack that definition, you start to really go deep into what mental toughness is. So that's a big favourite of mine, David. I like that one. Another one I use from time to time is somebody you'd be aware of, Vince Lombardi, who was the fairly famous gridiron coach, I think for the Packers, was it? Green Bay Packers, I think, but many, many years ago. And he defined mental toughness as being character and action. And again, I really like that definition, because it's simple, practical day to day, and it's really talks to your self-definition and self-determination, and what is your character, and how does that play out in day to day when you're going around. Well, in his case, his players on the field, but with my clients in their sort of day to day life. So that one I like, and another one which isn't exactly mental toughness, but has got huge elements of this, and that's another person you probably recognise, which would be Gilbert Enoka, who was the mindset coach for the New Zealand All Blacks for a good 10, 12 years, who apparently quite a successful rugby union team, and he was able. I think he took them post the 2007 semi-final defeat to France, when they kind of bottled it, and he took them from there as the mindset coach through a couple of World Cup wins. And his great phrase is, well, he's got lots of quotes, but this one is: take control one moment at a time, which again I really like as it relates to mental toughness, in that you're in the moment, just focus on the moment, but take control. You know, you've got to own what you're doing, and take responsibility for your thoughts and your actions right now, and don't think about don't think about what's coming. It's right now. And again, there are situations where I would definitely use that with some clients that we'll talk about later on, I'm sure, where they're just kind of overwhelmed and they need some clarity around kind of what they're going to do. And then the last one, probably that I use with audiences where I'm giving more of a sort of general presentation, would be Clough Strategic's definition of mental toughness being resilience and positivity, resilience and confidence, because most audiences would be able to understand their own definition of resilience, or one I can give them, and obviously similar to confidence. So those are probably 3 or 4 that I kind of relate to myself and I feel resonate with my audience. Hopefully that's what you were looking for, was it, David?
Well, regardless of what I was looking for, I love that approach, and yeah, I love the quotes too. I'm intrigued. So, comfortable in your own skin. I've heard that a lot with conversations I've had with Doug, and I certainly buy into that. So, how do you help your typical client become comfortable in their own skin?
I think, I would talk about this and write about this a lot. I think the control C, so a lot around one's sort of self efficacy, self-determination, self-awareness is really a cornerstone of mental toughness. So within my coaching, I would do a lot of work around a person's understanding of their self and who they are, what they believe in, what hill they're prepared to die on, what their values are, what the purpose is. And so I would go deep into that. And those people who are just pretty cool with who they are, who like who they are, who accept they understand their strengths, they perhaps accept their weaknesses to an extent. They don't beat themselves up, but they'll try and do their best to overcome them in some shape or form. Those are the people I think who are mentally toughest, because they're not fazed by much. They kind of got a longer term perspective. They recognise they're going to get bumps along the way. They don't over demonize the losses. They don't over celebrate the wins. So that's kind of what I see in comfortable in your own skin, and what we would do is, as I say, just do a lot of work around somebody's inner self.
I like the word acceptance there, when you mention it there, because if you can accept your strengths, the things that you're not so good at, then you're not going to have that voice in your head being like overly critical, and it's not going to be so much of a battle as well as life and in your general day to day.
I think that's absolutely right, and I don't think it automatically comes with age, but I think you generally get a little more of it as you get older. But there are some young people I know who are very comfortable with who they are, and yet there's some older people I know who are still quite unsure of who they are and don't like who they are. So it's not uniform, I don't think, in anything I've seen. I don't see a pattern between people who are comfortable and people who are uncomfortable. It just seems to be a little bit random.
Do you think experiences, like life experiences, can shape that?
I do think that helps. Having said this is a bit random. I do think those people who've travelled quite a bit, I do think those people actually have had quite an interesting bloodline. So one of the interesting things about Australia is that we're really just a conglomerate of immigrants from lots of different parts of the world, and that's interesting when I talk to people and understand their story. there's definitely, people I've come from the UK, but there were people who come from Eastern Europe or Italy or Africa or South America. It's quite a big South American contingent, and many of them have come to Australia because they're seeking a new world, and they talk of their stories of their parents and their grandparents and some of the often the challenges that they've had and how they fashioned their life. That they know that their parents perhaps sacrificed to get them to here, so that they could develop a new life. But what they've got in their mindset often is a leftover from that. Probably the fixed part of their mindset. They've got that hardwired. So I do think travel, and I think here there's, a lot of people who've come here to seek a better life. Often they just seem to be a little more accepting of the bumps along the road. They've got kind of a longer term perspective, perhaps, than some people who are a little more caught up in themselves.
And earlier you mentioned about resilience, positivity, and confidence. When you mention about a longer term perspective with mental toughness, is resilience more of a shorter term thing, or do you not see it that way?
I don't actually necessarily see it as that way. I know if you look at the dictionary, they talk about resilience being bouncing back, but I think there's just as much just pushing through, just keeping on going. And we all get resistance in some shape or form. So to me, resilience is a lot about one's resolve to keep going, keep pushing on, keep moving forwards. And so, to my mind, that's a big part of resilience. Is just keep going, don't give up. So to me, that's a long term as well as a short term.
And so your typical client is the entrepreneurial person, the person who's in charge of their own business. How do they go on to display that resilience, the mental toughness, and the way they go about their day to day?
Well, interestingly, I think pretty much all the owners, founders that I've met have at one point in time had mental toughness. They've been mentally tough because they've needed the courage to take a risk. They needed to resolve with themselves that they're going to have to work hard, be disciplined, have good habits, good routines. They've had to take risks, so they've had to have that sort of adaptive mindset, and they've just had to back themselves. They've had the self-belief. So pretty much, I think, if you're going to be a business founder, you're going to start a business, or you're going to own a business, you're going to have to be reasonably mentally tough to be able to cope with all the challenges that you get. But what I have found, and I was absolutely this person as well, is that you get very lonely professionally. So often you don't want to talk to your partner because they're believing in you and believing that everything is fine. You don't want to talk to your employees if you have them. You don't want to talk to you can't really talk to your accountant. And I say that with a degree of deference because that was my training initially. But you're probably not going to talk about how you're feeling with your accountant or lawyer. So I'm just the person they talk with because they're so professionally lonely. But they've all had the mental toughness, and they've displayed it in the ways I mentioned. But the people that I see probably are those that have lost it in some way. So they're generally feeling they might be overwhelmed. They've lost their sense of identity. They're lacking confidence. So it's an interesting, for me, it's often it's a restoration or repair kind of assignment. It's not a building from day one. It's kind of restoring what they probably had. That was a long answer, David, to a very short question. So apologies for that.
It goes to show, though, the power of actually just talking and having that support system around you. It's so important, regardless of whether you're a business person and in sport or just life in general.
I think so. That's right, and I'm sure we've both seen that in the last year that people have had varying experiences about COVID, and those that have got a really strong support network have perhaps fared better because of that.
Yeah, because ultimately it just helps you see things through a different set of eyes, doesn't it? A fresh perspective.
That's right, and we're all in it together as well. There's that sense of companionship and collaboration. You're not alone. Although last year, I'm sure in both the UK and Australia, there were many people who were alone because, of course, we had the restrictions in terms of social distancing and what have you.
This is a short advertisement introducing the sponsor for the show, Chimera Sport, who produce a range of sportswear and equipment to help enhance performance and recovery, reducing injury occurrences. And as someone who has had long-standing back issues, I've personally tested some of the garments and I've been more than happy with them. You'll also find that the infrared sportswear has been clinically tested too, so it's great for fitness enthusiasts who want to push harder, go further, and recover quicker. More details can be found on the product section of our website and in the show notes. So, as you know, I'm a sports psychologist, and I often talk a lot about sport. And I've noticed in your blogs and your articles, which you publish on a regular basis, there's often some synergy there with sport and fitness. I was just wondering where that motivation came from.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm a sort of an amateur, obviously, compared to yourself with regards to this field. But I guess because I like sport, for one, I think there's more similarities and differences between sports and business, which we can touch on. And also, I think in Australia, as probably in the UK as well, sport is such a big part of everyday life. So, lots of people here, men and women, would play sports, or they'd watch sports, or they'd have kids that play sports. So for me, it's quite an easy comparison to make with people in the business world, because people are interested in sports so that they can visualize situations on the sporting field that they might find a little more difficult in the business world. So for me, it's a good sort of comparison to make. And there are lots of differences, particularly things like just having a good mindset, having good routines and structures and processes. I think also in terms of things like momentum swings, on the sporting field, you everything seems against you, but you just by the 1%ers, you can turn things around, and it's got to start somewhere. Whether it's just you in a sole sport or whether it's in a team. So I love the comparisons between sport and business, particularly leadership but mindset as well. But my favourite sport, it used to be football. So I'm Manchester, and I just happen to live on the red side, so I followed Manchester United. And then since I've come to Australia, I'm a basketball fanatic. So I played badly at school, but I played, and I have 3 sons and a daughter, and they've all played to varying degrees of interest and ability, played or play. So I have watched a lot of basketball, and then I watch. We have quite a high standard league over here, National Basketball League, and so I watch that pretty regularly as well.
Yeah, when you talk about momentum shifts, there's certainly going to be momentum shifts in basketball with just the speed of play.
Yeah, absolutely. There was an amazing match last night, David, between Perth Wildcats, who are the kind of the champions. They're reigning champions, but they've got an amazing record over there. I think they've not missed the final series in the last 30 years, so 30 seasons at the top. They're just incredible. But they were down 60 to 39 half time. They were getting completely taken apart by the Adelaide team. And I think they were down 26 points at one time. But in the second half, they just changed. They changed the shape, they changed the momentum, and they won the second half by 30 points, 58-28, 58-28. So they won by 9 in the end. I think it was sort of 97-88 or something. But it was just an amazing example of, on the face of it, you would have just given up had you been the Perth Wildcats, but they just got their way back into a game by lots of one percenters, lots of defending well, harrying the opposition, the bench up and giving them encouragement, all those little things. There's no one big thing. It was just lots of little things. And I think that's so much like business. If you can get up, dress up, show up in the right frame of mind, get to work, and you're positive about it, and your teammates are as well. You've got clarity about what you're trying to do. There are so many similarities between business and sports, which is why I write about it.
Yeah, it's so true. That is, it's very easy to let your emotions take over in those sort of situations, regardless of whether it is sport or business. But if you can just, like you say, if you've got sort of good habits and awareness around how you want to be and what sort of attitude you want to display, then it can help you so much.
Definitely. And that's when we were talking about Gilbert and Oka and the All Blacks take control one moment at a time. That's kind of where I see that we might be 21 points down at half time, but that's gone. What we can affect is the next minute. And I think they went on a 9-0 run to start with, so that then starts to build some confidence in them and then some doubt in the opposition as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, in terms of when you're developing mental toughness with individuals, what sort of benefits do they then feel from your work?
Well, we were talking about most of them would be business owners or leaders, and I think most of them would be mentally tough at some point in time. Some of them too mentally tough. So actually, some of my work sometimes is dialing back people's mental toughness to make them a little more empathetic or sensitive to emotions. But for the most part, my clients there's probably sort of three things that I see a lot. One would be that clients have lost clarity about what they're doing, why they're doing it. They've lost their identity in some cases, which I think I mentioned before, and they've lost confidence. So really what I'm trying to do, those tend to be the three main reasons, is really spend a lot of time listening to understand sort of where they come from and what their current problems are. And the frameworks I would use would be always the MTQ framework, and I would use the plus to understand, to get a understanding of where somebody's at now from a mindset perspective, and I would use the results as part of an initial discovery session. And then I would also use the grow method, which is probably the most basic method, as you know, of coaching, but it works for me and my clients, which is kind of understanding what the current reality is and where they want to get to, and then building a bridge from there. So really, I think to answer your questions, we go through a fairly simple process, but I think my clients find it fairly cathartic, probably, to be able to just talk through the problems. And a lot of the time I'm not really helping them except by asking the questions that get them thinking and talking about where they're at and what the problems are and what the priorities might need to be, what the most important ones are. And one thing I have really noticed is, which is probably worth mentioning, is I think most business people, when they start a business, got a very clear focus on what they want to do. So they have a sort of an inch wide, mile deep laser focus on priorities and what they're going to do today, tomorrow, the next day. And if they come from a sales background or engineering background, it doesn't matter, but they will have their signature strength. But what happens over time as they build the business is that laser focus gets diluted, and therefore their effectiveness gets diluted and their confidence ebbs away, and they suddenly are in a situation where they're sort of a mile wide, inch deep, because they've got so many other distractions that they've not been able to leverage technology or people to ensure that they can keep their focus. So one of the things that I see time and time again is that we're able to kind of reconnect with that, what their original purpose was and the original model was and the original mindset was, and then we can get back to sort of put it into practice.
Do you find with that type of individual as well that they're really highly committed and that doesn't really alter, that doesn't change, but potentially because of that causes some of the issues there?
Yeah, they are committed, but and so you're absolutely right. That's part of the issue, because it's not like they're. I think for most of them, it's, well, I've just got to work harder. So what tends to happen is they work. They'll start working late at night. They'll start working weekends. They'll stop sitting there. Stop being present in conversations with their family members, and then they start to sort of occupy this kind of weird world where they're feeling very alone because people are being a little more critical. So the commitment doesn't change, but because it in many ways it intensifies. It's just probably the direction of that commitment and the prioritization of that commitment.
Yeah, I've seen that an awful lot in business and in sport as well. And like someone's effectiveness is really it's pretty bad because of it.
Yeah, and the health as well, Dave. Don't you see that as well? You touched on, I think, in the last question about the physical side, and to my mind, if you can get your physical fitness right, that's got a really huge benefit on your mental fitness. But what happens, and it happened to me as well, was I just would work too hard, and then I'd go home and have 3, 4, 5, 6 glasses of wine or something stronger, and not do any exercise, and suddenly, very quickly you're mental. You're not as sharp mentally as you were because you're not as sharp physically as you were.
Yes, certainly things like meditation and yoga, they're so helpful in that respect.
Yeah,
we could talk about that one all day. But again, though, it gets back to having good habits and good routines around your own well-being and mental health to make sure that you are efficient and maximize your strengths.
Definitely.
So I'm intrigued as we begin to wrap up now. Who's had a big influence, or who's had the biggest influence on your life and career?
Well, I don't think there's been no one that's been the biggest influence, but there've been. I'll give a shout out to my mum and dad. So my mum was really quite. She was very calm. Longer term perspective about things. My dad was very much, I think, saw life as an adventure and kind of just got stuff done. All hours of the day, he was just doing stuff. You could never get him sitting down. He was, here, there, and everywhere. And I think I took elements of that, learned from that. But along the way, I've been lucky. I've known some and worked with some amazing people. As colleagues, as 1 or 2 managers, people who've worked for me, my clients now. So I think one of the wonderful things is I don't think the learning ever stops. If you're open to it, you can just find that you're learning every day. And so I couldn't say it's the biggest influence, but there've just been hundreds of influences along the way, just little things that I've noticed that I thought that's smart, and I'll try and copy that or utilize that in some way.
Yeah, that's great. And for the listeners, Are you able to give 3 takeaways from our conversation there?
Yeah, I think so. I'd say the ones I'd probably go for, first of all, is that you've got a choice. Everybody's got a choice, and a choice that not everybody makes, but a choice to take control, make a difference to your life, and I think so. Being able to manage your mindset, manage your emotions, perhaps focus, get in balance between focusing on outcomes and emotions in the right balance is really important. But you've got that choice to do that. I think I'm a big fan of moving forwards. So there's a great quote I like by a writer called James Clear, who talks about Rome wasn't built in a day, but they laid bricks every day. And kind of that's the notion that just keep moving forwards. However bad the day is, you can just get stuff done, and just make progress. Some days not much, other days lots of progress, but that's the aim. And then you've got forward momentum, and that helps you mentally as well as obviously practically. And then the third one that we touched on, didn't we, around inner voice, I think is just see the world in a more positive way. So I don't know about in the UK, but here there's increasingly in business, there's this obsession with managing risk, avoiding risk, compliance. And it's everything that to me is the negative side. So I just my takeaway would be try and see the world in a positive way, internally and externally. So kind of almost look on the bright side of life, which I think is a sort of Monty Python song, but it's almost be more positive because it's going to benefit you in terms of your mindset and mental approach.
That's great. I thought you were going to do a bit of a karaoke there for me.
I'm burst into song, but you wouldn't want that.
So yeah, I've really enjoyed our conversation there. You've shared some excellent insights into what mental toughness is all about there. Whereabouts can the listeners find you, Paul?
Thanks, David. Probably my LinkedIn profile is a good one. So it's Paul Lyons, and I live in Sydney, Australia, or New South Wales, Australia. That's probably the best place to find me. Or our website's mentaltoughness.partners, mentaltoughness.partners. So that's the Mental Toughness website.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, like I say, I really appreciate your time, and yeah, big thank you.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, David. And hopefully speak to you again soon.
Definitely.
It was great to get a different perspective and a different angle from a well-respected coach who operates in the field on a regular basis, and also someone who puts out a lot of quality content through his blogs and articles. Paul certainly delivered. Great value for money there. And it certainly gave me some nice timely reminders. So if you enjoyed the episode as much as I did, I'd be really, really grateful if you could go on to iTunes, subscribe to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, and give it a positive review. Have a fantastic week. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sports psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.